When we take over something and we try to control it, it's coming from a place of notness, right? It's not happening, or it's not here, or it's not doing it. Therefore, I have to do it. I have to take this upon myself and go do it. There is this sense of taking over and doing it yourself, you can say. When we withhold autonomy from something, the following result of that is doership, because we've taken away the quote unquote automatedness, the automaticness or the autonomy of something. It's kind of like imagine an automatic machine, and we have denied or disrecognized its automation. And because we've withdrawn that recognition, we don't recognize its automatedness. Hence, therefore, the consequential result of that is that we take upon ourselves to do it manually. We don't recognize its automatedness, right? It's not here, it's not happening, it's not doing it. Therefore, it's me. I'm needed. I'm, I have to take over. I have to take upon myself to do that. And so that's what happens with ego doership. Instead of the, you can say, original isness, it is replaced with doership. It's replaced with this separated manual doership that's coming from a place of notness. Now, recently I got sick. And so there was this sense of frustration, annoyance, discomfort, and things sort of didn't go smoothly. I even dropped my toothbrush on the floor. And so I had to replace it. And it was just causing me, annoyance. And I was in this frustrated, miserable place. And I realized this isn't working out. I am in the muck, I'm in the muck and suffering the annoyances, the frustrations. And so I stepped back. I quote unquote recuperated back in home base, emptiness. And I thought, get me through this. And with that intention, the fog of frustration or annoyance instantly dispersed, instantly dissipated. There was a shifting from the front seat to the back seat, and just allowing the driver to drive itself without taking over, hugging hugging the wheel, and just stepping back and just allowing it to be. This is in line with my previous video titled Treat as Adult, Enjoy Isness. You see, when you treat something as adult, you recognize their autonomy, right? And so you don't rule over them, right? You don't impose or try to control or quote unquote colonize, because they are an adult. You respect their adultness, you respect their autonomy. It's the cessation of infantilism, treating something in this infantilizing way of oppressing, controlling, smothering, and ruling over, right? It's granting their freedom, granting their autonomy, respecting their adultness. And so it acts as an adult, you know? And what I noticed or realized at that time when I was sick is that it's applicable to, you can say, consciousness, Imagine consciousness awareness as this amorphous, amorphous thing. It's malleable, It's this shapeless, amorphous, malleable, energy, right? And how you treat it or what intention you give it, you can say, it shapes itself into that. It does that. And so when you treat consciousness awareness, you can say as an adult, and recognize its autonomy, then it will, you can say, work for you instead of you taking over it and trying to manually, quote unquote, manually do something, do it, get there, get it, try to be in this state, try to be in that state, etc. You're in the rubbles, you've injected yourself and you come from a place of lack, right? You colonized and you, quote unquote, desecrated its isness. But when you recognize or respect its autonomous isness, then it will serve you. It will serve you the isness of your intention. And so at that time when I was sick, I intended for it to get me through this, because if it were me, if I'm colonizing it, I'm in such a miserable, frustrated, annoyed place. I'm begrudging the state of sickness, and I wasn't able to do what I planned to do on that day, and things are not going smoothly. So if it were me in my manual ego doership, it just doesn't go well. And so I let go of that wheel, of that position, and just let it handle it itself. It's the same with what I've mentioned in my previous video when I met this particular person and I'm not in a very comfortable place when I interact with that person. And so instead of going through psychological gymnastics to put myself in whatever kind of state, I just treat it as an adult, you know, give it its autonomy so it acted as an adult. Basically, the more we infantilize, the more in doership we are. The more we are in notness, because we've disrecognized yesness. We've pushed away isness and yesness and adultness and engage, you can say, with infantilism, with notness. And that's what I appreciate about challenges or unpreferred situations that you get this deepening of insight or deepening of realizations, which you can't get when things are normal. Now, this amorphous consciousness, awareness, energy, let's call it currency. Now, if you treat this currency as an infant, again, you take over it. And so the experience of manual ego doership happens. But when you treat it as an adult, as a partner, let's say, then that will be the experience, right? It will be the one to serve you. It'll be the one to do it. It's a bit hard to describe. Probably that's why some people call it no self. It's quote unquote no self because you're not anymore taking upon it. Like it's me. I'm the one. I come from a place of notness. It's not here. It's not happening. Therefore, I'm doing it. But when you recognize the presence, the already isness of it, and again, you treat it as an adult, then you're in this, you can say, receptive, receiving place. Like, for example, when I was doing my work and I just quote unquote commanded this consciousness awareness, this currency to do the work. And so it does the work. There's a more lightness to it, you know? It's like you can say it's like a cooperation compared to quote unquote hugging the position, colonizing the position, and doing it yourself in this struggling manual ego doership. Again, it's like a cooperation. It's kind of like the two sides of the coin cooperating. You know, there is this emptiness and content. Instead of being in tight identification with the content side, there is now this back seat and the front seat. And of course, when you hop in a cab, you tell the driver where you want to go, right? But you're not the one driving the car, right? You're not invading their position, or you're not ruling over, or you're not imposing and grabbing the wheel yourself. You're in this back seat, right? And you just recognize the driver's autonomy, that he can drive himself, that he is an adult, right? That you can say follow instructions, that he'll take you where you told him to, right? Now, if you don't treat the driver as an adult and you treat him as an infant, as a child, right? You treat him in this infantilizing way, then of course you're gonna hug his seat, right? You're gonna take over and not trust him because you see him as a child. You're gonna be in a distrusting place, and so I must be the one to do it. It's me. I have to take over because I can't trust you. And so I have to take over and take over the wheel. And so that's what happens with consciousness awareness, you can say. If we treat consciousness awareness as a child or as an infant, then we're going to be in that sense of ego doership. We're going to try to, control ourselves, or go into psychological navigation or mental gymnastics. We're going to be so busy, you know, we're going to be so busy in the rubbles. And so, once again, when we step back and recognize adultness, recognizing autonomy, recognizing, capacity, in the same way as an adult has the capacity, right? Like an adult driver has the capacity to drive, right? If it's a child, then it obviously he doesn't have that capacity, right? But when there's a recognition that it's an adult, there is the trust. There is the trust that they're gonna perform as an adult, and he's gonna drive you to where you instructed him to go. And so if we treat consciousness awareness or currency this way, now there is a kind of quote unquote healthy relationship. You're not anymore trying to control it, rule over it, hug it, colonize it, or smother it, oppress it, infantilize it, right? There is this respecting of its capacity. There is the recognition of the adult capacity, meaning there is the recognition of its autonomy, autonomousness, automaticness, so that you're not so busy in manual doership. It's kind of like when a partner is immature, right? Then all the burden gets dumped onto the other partner. When the other partner does not perform and does not do their adult tasks, right? Then all that burden gets dumped to the other partner. And so there is distrust also, right? Like you cannot trust that infantilized partner, that immature partner to do what they're supposed to do, right? They're immature. they are entitled. And so there is now this unhealthy relationship, or another type of unhealthy relationship is a controlling relationship, right? When there's disrespecting, of the autonomy of the other, and there's this mothering and controlling and oppressing, well, then it's an equally unhealthy relationship, right? So that's how it is with our currency, you can say. If we treat it as having autonomy, if we respect it as an adult, and we trust it, in their adultness, then that's the experience that we get. Like, for example, if we have trust, right? If we have reliance, or if we have belief or trust that this currency does not bleed itself and stay contained, you can say, then if we encounter a situation, or maybe someone who's offering a notness idea, right? Then our currency remains. It wouldn't bleed out to the notness idea that that person is offering. There's a sense of settledness, in trusting, there's a sense of settledness. You're in trusting that this, you can say, currency wouldn't, quote unquote, do you any harm. Another image that comes to mind is the animation Fantasia. And I have a very vague recollection of it, but I remember there was a scene of Mickey Mouse using magic to make the broom come alive. So he commanded it to do the cleaning itself, right? He granted it autonomy. And so, yeah, that comes to mind. And again, if you recognize the adultness of something, then you get to enjoy its isness instead of suffering the notness. You're in enjoyment of its service, right? And essentially, that's how it is. How we treat something is the experience that we get, right? If we treat it as being of service, then what we experience is being served, right? If we treat it as an infant, or as a notness, or as not enough, not here, not doing it, right? Then this amorphous, currency will will shape itself as that, and that'll be our experience, you know? Yeah, you can do your own experiments with this. If there's a challenge, or if there's an unpreferred situation, maybe, or just everyday life, instead of hugging it, or being confined, right, in a tight identity structure and ego doership, try being in the back seat and just commanding, you can say, commanding this amorphous currency, or consciousness awareness, to whatever. Right. Again, when I was sick, I just commanded it to just get me through this, because I'm very ineffective when I'm in this state of being sick. Right. I'm just making myself miserable and suffer more. So I'm ineffective. Please be the one. You be the one to get me through this. And again, the fog of frustration dissipated, and I recovered pretty quickly, actually. And so, yeah, that's you can say that's a practical exercise. You treat it as an adult partner. You trust it to be a capable adult partner, right? Instead of taking over and treating it as an infant.